Hello there, it's Jaymz Bee. Welcome to my podcast. Now, this may be a little bit of the podcast that goes on Facebook everywhere, or it could be the full-length podcast. And if you're not looking at the full length, go to jaymzbee.ca, click on podcast, and you can watch it there. It's also available on YouTube every Friday. This is podcast number 8. I'm going to tell you what's happening in town, and in about 8 minutes, Richard Underhill will join me. He's best known for the Shuffle Demons, but he's won a Juno with his own band. He's traveled the world. He's a bit of an activist as well, and he's got a lot to say about the art scene and the scene here in Toronto. And I've known him since I was that big. I've known him since I was Madonna's boy toy. Okay, that's not true, but I sure looked like I could have been dating Madonna in the 80s. Nice hat, B. Anyway, he's a great guy, and he's going to tell us all about his career in music and the arts, and that's happening in a few minutes. Now, meanwhile, what's happening here in town? Well, I want to thank our sponsors. A lot of these clubs I'm talking about, they help me out. And if you want to help me out, Patreon is where you want to go. Patreon is a good idea. And I love the people that have supported me so far. Thank you for that so much. I should tell you, I just found out it's in American money. So if you're giving me $5 a month, add $1 to that. If it's $10 a month, you know, it's a little more than you might think. So I'm giving you a heads up there. I just found that out. Meanwhile, Richard Underhill, he's coming up in 8 minutes, but I want to thank Barbarian Steakhouse. Wonderful. Do you eat steak? You're going to love it there. If you don't eat steak, I don't eat meat, but I love it there. The food is great. The waiters are sensational. The ambience is amazing, and I need a thesaurus because it's so good. I need to find way more words to tell you, but let me just say, go to Barbarians. Thank me later. BarberFinancial.com. Paul Barber is with me in Cuba right now as this is going on the air, and I'll be back to tell stories about Cuba. I have a company called Beeline Music Adventure Tours, and I take people around on musical adventures, and we'll be down at the Havana Jazz Festival. So jaymzbee.ca if you want to find out more about the tours, and if you want to watch the podcast, etc., etc. So thanks to barberfinancial.ca. He was my first sponsor on this podcast, and this is podcast number 8. So we'll get to Richard Underhill in just a minute, but right now, in the clubs in the next week, Lula Lounge, lula.ca, love those guys. That is a warm place to go, especially in the winter. You just feel so good in that room. And tonight, Roberta Hunt Trio. She's got a bit of that New Orleans vibe. While you're having a delicious meal, walk in at 6:30. You can have dinner. The show's at 7:30. After an hour, you'll be digesting a little bit. Then you can have dance lessons. Then there's a live band, Rojitas, and then, as usual, DJ Suave spins, and you just keep dancing. Live music and DJs all night long until about 2 a.m. Now, tomorrow is Salsa Saturday with Charangon del Norte, and that's something that sounds pretty cool. But what really sounds interesting to me is Speaker Slam. That's happening this week at Lula Lounge, and the topic is the moment that defined your life. Cool topic. It's a speaker series, and it's an early show, 7 p.m. Get all the information at lula.ca for everything happening this week. And meanwhile, over at Hughes Room Live, tomorrow night, Rick Emmett and Dave Dunlop are performing. Now, Dave Dunlop is a fantastic trumpet player, but this Dave Dunlop is a fantastic guitar player. They're not related. They have the same name. They're both brilliant, but this is 2 guitars on stage. And of course, most of you know Rick Emmett. He was a rock god in the 70s, and his voice is incredible. Now, I saw both of them at they're at Hughes Room now. I saw them at Kerner Hall about a year ago. They blew my mind. How good 2 guitars can sound, and then Rick Emmett even sang a little bit. It just melted me. So you got to go to this. It's tonight, Saturday night and Sunday night, Hughes Room Live. And in the day, Sunday, you can enjoy the Sunday afternoon gospel brunch organized and performed. Ken Whiteley is the guy behind that. He's freaking fantastic. So Ken Whiteley's gospel brunch on Sunday, and then you could hang out, go for a walk, come back, and see Rick Emmett and Dave Dunlop. Other things happening at Hughes Room Live, Auto Rickshaw, wonderful world music. They're playing on the 30th. And on the 31st, the Shuffle Demons are back from Cuba. Now, I'm talking to Richard now. Then we're off to Cuba. It's a coincidence that we're both there at the same time. But he'll be back, and you can see them on the 31st at Hughes Room. You better call Hughes Room or go to their website right now because those tickets are going to fly out the door. What else is happening? Jazz Bistro, the great drummer Mark Kelso. I was going to do an impression of Mark Kelso, but I'm not good looking enough to do an impression of Mark Kelso. Anyway, he's at Jazz Bistro with his trio, 9 p.m. And I always say get there early because the dinner is fantastic. I was there again last week. The Pinot Noir is fantastic with the halibut. It's just to die for. All the food's good, but I always go for the halibut. So, Sunday, there's 2 different singers over at Jazz Bistro, and they're doing a benefit for the International Resource Center for the Performing Arts. IRCIPA, for short. Okay. It's Ori Dagan, and he is a scat master. He's highly entertaining, super, like, fast singer, great guy. And Dominic Mancuso, a romantic, a Latin lover. He is the coolest Italian guy, and you're going to love these 2 together. They can do ballads, they can sing fast, they can do all kinds of things, but they're very different. Should be a remarkable double bill, and that is this Sunday at 7 p.m. Now, at the Old Mill, Toronto, a great trumpet player named Steve McDade is performing, and he's bringing his quartet over to the Homesmith Bar. Cozy little bar. I talk about this every week. 7:30 p.m. show, 7:30 to 10:30. No cover, $20 minimum. And of course, Steve McDade would play with amazing musicians because he's brilliant too. He's got Rob Pilch on guitar, Scott Alexander on bass, and Brian Barlow on drums. This is going to be a great show. And also coming up this week, Ron Davis. He'll be there with his trio. He's there with Steve Heathcote and Paul Novotny. And I hope Ron Davis will do some of his own music. He is such a brilliant composer. I'm sure he will. I'm sure if you ask him to. He also does wicked standards. He's put out so many records. Bit of an overachiever, that guy. No, he's just perfect. He works real hard, and I have a wall of his music at my house and a whole book of his sheet music. And if you want to be mean to a piano player when they come to your house, just put one of his songs in front and see if they can play it, just reading it off the page. Because his stuff is really, really tricky and just beautiful. Great music. Over at the Rex, they book so many bands. They book 2 shows every day of the week, but 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. And my favorite thing coming up, John McLeod's Rex Hotel Orchestra. They won Junos, and they're playing on Monday the 28th at 8:30. You'll want to get there early because the U of T jazz ensembles play. You get to see some younger people play. Sometimes a professor might jump up with them. But it's a really cool thing to watch these bands and what they do. And then you've got a seat ahead of time for John McLeod's Rex Hotel Orchestra. I'd say since Rob McConnell passed away, and the Boss Brass are no more, I'd say this is it. This is like some of the thickest, most beautiful charts in the city, and he's an amazing cornet trumpet player. I love his solos, and he writes charts that show off the entire band. The entire band are huge stars, so you want to check that out, and you want to check out everything at the Rex, therex.ca, and a quick thank you and a hello to the Reservoir Lounge, reservoirlounge.com. They have kick-ass music there. Usually it's Tuesdays to Saturdays, but always check their website, reservoirlounge.com. Love the bar in there. I love Ray and all of his staff. They're just the coolest people, and it's so much fun. And also, up in the Junction, you might want to check La Revolution, larev.com. And Indira and her staff, inexpensive Mexican food. She's been in business over 8 years, and she's only about 30 years old. So the fact that a young girl can have a restaurant that has live music and pays the band, it's a magical place in the Junction. So there's some things for you to think about. And now over to Richard Underhill. I want to tell you one little thing about him. First of all, I've told you, Juno Award winning. He's a sax player. He plays, well, now he plays mostly alto, but we're going to hear more about the other things he did on his way in his musical journey. He's with the Shuffle Demons, that's what he's best known for, and he's a real activist and culture hero in Toronto. He lives in Kensington Market, and he is so proud of that area. And really, I always said Kensington Market, ever since I saw it, that defines Canada. That's where all cultures have all different restaurants and everyone gets along, and it's a magical place. So Richard Underhill, back from Cuba. It's going to be so much fun to talk to him. And I actually worked with him in the Royal Jelly Orchestra for many years. So we're good friends, and it's going to be cool for me to learn about Richard Underhill as well as you. So let's go right now.
Cheers. Cheers.
Hey,
Jaymz
great to see you.
Bee. Great to see you too.
Richard Underhill, how do you divide your time between Shuffle Demons, your own personal projects, your sideman projects, and your community-minded projects.
Divide my time. Well, I'm not sure I consciously divide my time. Things come to me and I'm interested in them, and so I work on them, and then it all just seems to kind of flow together. I mean, I have to say I've done a little less work on my own individual project because Stitch Winston of the Shuffle Demons works so hard getting us to tour all around the world. So I'm just kind of fielding that.
I want to start with Shuffle Demons, and then we're going to go back in time.
Yeah.
Shuffle Demons began what year?
1984, September.
And the Spadina Bus, same year? The music video?
No, the music video came out in 1986.
Yeah?
Yeah, so it was a couple of years. We played on the streets. I mean, I can do a quick version of the story.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to York. I moved in to Mike Murley's house, and we never played together. It was funny. He was, very technically astute and really, really learned in jazz. And I was a bit of a sort of a feral child saxophone player who had like a necktie as a neck strap and, a goatee, and I was just kind of a weirdo. One day the power went out in our house, and we jammed, and we had this click. Because we both liked it was like a puzzle piece fitting together. We both liked what each other had.
Yeah.
And I'd been busking on the street, and so he said, okay, I'm going to come out with you one day. We came out, young and blur, made a bunch of money, he liked it. Next day, who shows up? He asks Stitch and Dave Parker. Shuffle Demons are born.
Wow, so 3 saxes and a drum.
Yeah.
You're on the street.
Yeah.
And how did you become with the name Shuffle Demons? Did it have anything to do with Sun Ra or something else?
Well, maybe. I'd been going to York University and was writing. We all had to do a big band project, and so I wrote this kind of lilting ballad called Guru Ship, and which it's got a very Sun Ra sounding kind of name. And then I wanted something to kind of come in the middle and destroy it. So halfway through the tune, it got kind of crazy, and then the shuffle monster came in. And so when we were on the street, people asked us our name, and we were playing the Shuffle Monster or something, and the Shuffle Demons just kind of came out, and then I liked it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Born of a mistake in a way.
Yeah, very, very organic.
And when did you add bass?
Well, when we started going inside, so we did a tour of Europe in 1985, a busking tour in the summer for 3 months. Bought a van in Amsterdam, that was falling apart, and went all the way down to Barcelona and back through France, and then basically got the van ripped out from under us by the police in Scheveningen, Den Haag, because it was falling apart and they didn't like the idea of it. But yeah, we did 3 months of that. It was incredible. Just saw Europe, busked.
So that's still 3 saxes and a drummer?
And drums, yeah. Went behind the Berlin Wall because that was 1985. So we went over and busked in East Germany and met people and had a great time. And East Berlin Angst, the tune talks about that. Then we came back, and I'd sent back press releases, actually, typed from Europe, mailed to like the Globe and Mail and the Star. Shuffle Demons go to Venice, busking on the streets there, doesn't work out so well. Just little
storytelling.
Yeah, storytelling. And I was just talking to Mark Miller, who remembered that. And when we came back, there was excitement, so then we started getting indoor gigs, and that's when we added bass.
And your first bass player was Jim Vivian?
Absolutely, yes.
And I guess he was another student. Like, you all met each other through scale school? Or?
No, Jim had come to just be a jazz player from Newfoundland. He came to Toronto to be a jazz player in Toronto. He didn't really go to school, but he was, in demand as as people started getting gigs. He was one of the go-to people for sure, and a good friend of Mike.
And how did the switch? I remember Out of My House Roach was a very, very funny video as well. You guys had a lot of videos back in those days.
Yeah.
When did some members start changing?
Well, I guess after about 87-ish. Yeah, I think if you had a foot in the traditional jazz camp, being in the Shuffle Demons wasn't necessarily a good thing. There was a bit of a ripping of the time continuum there.
Right. Are you playing in a high-end jazz club? Are you playing on the street? Are you wearing crazy clothes and rapping?
Exactly. What are you doing? So Jim made that choice first, and then Mike also made that choice. And, they were getting busy with other projects, too, and we were touring a lot. And there was a certain kind of balls-to-the-wall way that I used to do it, and we still kind of do it, although it's more organized, where we're going for it. Whatever it is, we're going to go play Saskatoon, even if it only pays $20 in the early days, just because we wanted to get that momentum and get that critical mass happening.
I think that's an important lesson for people, that you can when you're starting, get out there and get in people's faces. If you're waiting for your ship to come in, it might be a long wait.
Well, more than ever now, I think, where people are doing that and they have the ability through social media. We, kind of pioneered in a way, because I had little slips of paper on all the tables, and people put down their address, and then we would do a newsletter.
You actually had mailing addresses.
We had mailing addresses.
Amazing.
And then we would kind of partner with clubs. It was like, hey, we're doing a gig here, like the Diamond, or whatever, the
Before
Phoenix.
it was the Phoenix Concert Theater.
Before it was the Phoenix. So they said, sure, we'll pay for your mailing run. We'll throw in one of our regular flyers, and then I would do all the work and get it out, and that would, kind of garner things. So we kind of partnered with clubs and other bands sometimes too.
You also had probably one of the first bands in Canada to actually have art direction. You had Kurt Swinghammer doing designs for some of your sets and your clothes, painted clothes.
Yes, and album covers.
Really, one of the first bands ever to do that here, I'm sure.
I guess so, yeah. And it was, once again, a fortuitous mistake. A friend of a photographer or something was designing our first album cover, and it was really not a good job. It was like a real high school, music notes on the, and guys flying through the air, and it was just like, this is not happening. So with the last ditch effort, someone said Kurt, and we grabbed on, he made this amazing album cover for our first album, Street Nicks. And then from that point, he when the second album came out, he said, hey, why don't I design these new clothes? And he designed the whole set of Out of My House Roach videos. So he was very, very active. Worked hundreds of hours for not much money, but for him also establishing himself, it was a really important moment.
Were you familiar with his music, Mr. and Mrs. Amway, for example?
Oh, I knew about his music for sure. I don't know that in particular.
Another crazy music video.
I know. Kurt's great, though. I love him.
So you guys had wild outfits, videos, proper album artwork.
Yeah.
You're traveling around on the streets, kind of playing anywhere. And then when did it start where you were actually playing university gigs? I remember we did a show together in Calgary.
Right.
And I don't even know what year it was.
I'll never forget that one. So I guess once the video came out in 1986, and the momentum really started rolling, and we actually played Expo 86 for 6 weeks. We did 6 sets a day with 2 days off. It was crazy.
That would tighten you up.
Exactly.
Might bust a lip, but that's going to tighten you up.
It was a real Beatles and Hamburg kind of thing. We were just going and going and going and going. Busking for half of it, like official paid busking, and then playing clubs for the other half. And then we hooked up with Michael and Kay White from the Trick or Treat Agency, and they booked us a little college tour on the way back, and that's when it kind of took off.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many years were you together before you started going to Europe? I mean, aside from the first busking tour, when you started going over there and making money.
Right. Well, I guess that would have been, and at this point, George Kohler and Perry White had assumed positions. Like in 1988, we put out the What Do You Want album, and that was kind of a transitional one with Mike Murley on some of it, and then Perry White on the rest of it. And I think it was in the early 90s, or 89 when we went over there for the first time.
Yeah.
And it started very simply with a few gigs. Hilarious stuff. I had my ex had a friend in London, and so I was hanging out with them, and I rented a BMW for the whole band, and it was a BMW 2-door coupe, and I picked them up at Heathrow. Hold on. Picked them up at Heathrow 4 hours late. This is before cell phones. I couldn't tell them that I picked it up in the other end of London, and had my first London driving experience was about 80 roundabouts driving on the inner ring road all the way to Heathrow. And then they were mad as hell because they were just sitting there stewing, and then they saw this car and they were like, "Are you kidding?" And I thought it was a Range Rover. I thought it would be big. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't know what a BMW was. It's ridiculous. So somehow we all fit in, and for a BMW, it's funny to have the trunk roped down with all the luggage. We all fit in, and it drove to Leeds like this. That's the way it inauspiciously started, but they kept it together, and then things got better from there.
And then when did you start getting to Asia and other parts of the world?
Right, so we did Europe in the 90s. We did it extensively, as we went. We played East Berlin when it just opened up, and so we we got to do some wonderful gigs in Europe, and one of the ones that was really the most interesting and really informed my political worldview was we played Wiedervereinigung in Germany, which is the joining together of the two Germanys. So when the official kind of party night that the two Germanys were joining together, and we'd been playing over there enough that someone heard about us, and we played in this town called Hof, at a big loft, really cool, organized by this West German guy who was like, you know, feeling like a king because he had all the money and there were East German models, and you know, he was like, for 10 marks here and there, everyone thought he was a king. So, but it was a really interesting look at the political scene through the bands that played. So first off were these Czech guys, because we're right on the Czech border too, and they were like this weird folk punk band that had hockey stick guitars, honest, and like guitars made of hockey sticks and blowpipes into melodicas, you know, and accordions to be played as pianos. Freaky, really interesting. Then it was the East Germans, and they had this thing with nude poetry and fire and a wall, and it was just real sort of emotional, poetic, philosophical explanation of what was happening, this crazy transition for them, which was something, you know, really different. And then we played, and we were the Shuffle Demons, who were wacky and goofy, and then the final band to play was the the West German band, excuse me. That was a top 40 cover band. And that was just like, oh my God, here it is. That's the West, guys. Take your weird, artistic, interesting, philosophical stuff and compact it into a box, and this is where you're headed.
Oh, my word. Really, and how much fun and liberating would it be for the East Germans to be able to show what they wanted to do, but probably had to do in secret?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And the Czechs, too. Like, once the cover band came on, we jammed with the Czechs in the back room because they were so cool, you know, because they were definitely interesting. Yeah, so that, you know, it was interesting how free jazz and all these kinds of musics were very popular in the East at that time because they didn't have words, but they were still this kind of germ of freedom and this expression of what people were feeling without the words.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you ended up, after many tours of Europe, many tours across Canada, did you do anything down in the U.S.? Were you going down there very much?
A little bit. We did some showcases in New York. I remember busking in Washington Square Park to try and get some people to a gig, and we gave out these flyers, and then all these homeless people showed up at the club, and the people were like, no, you can't even get it.
Oh, right, you're giving out flyers when you're busking, but that doesn't mean it's no cover for absolutely everyone.
I know. It was great, though, that the people were wonderful who showed up, but so we only did mild forays into the U.S., and we were mainly focused on Europe, and did so many tours, I think, 15 tours or something. And all.
You ended up going to Asia and India, though.
Exactly.
How did that come about?
Well, so basically, at some point, all these tours had kind of ground everyone down, and they lost interest. And so it was just me with a big pile of debt doing it. So
CDs, T-shirts, whatever, all the stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So then I changed the band, got a little bit more electric, added Eric Saint Laurent, Mike Milligan, and Greg Smith. It was a quartet with just me playing, and we kind of finished out the European swings, did a bunch of stuff till '97. I sold everything off, managed to kind of climb back to zero.
What was was it crispy bacon, crispy? What was
Extra Crispy.
Extra Crispy was the...
Now, that was sort of the last album with the original band.
Okay.
Yeah, which was funny, was the absolutely perfect kind of Spinal Tap, career-killing album. It was quite humorous when you think about it. We met an artist in Amsterdam who was doing these really kind of experimental things, and like the meat dress, that kind of thing. And one of them was she covered her torso, naked torso, in bacon. And it was just such a compelling image, but then adding that on the album cover with the title Extra Crispy was just so Spinal Tap, quite funny. I mean, so politically incorrect. Even though, I mean, as promoting her as this sort of experimental artist who was really pushing the, exploring the ideas of feminism and how people's bodies are treated as meat was interesting.
And you always had lyrics in the band, you always had instrumentals in the band, like it was about half and half almost. And then when you went electric for that one short period, how long did that last when you actually had the guitar in the band and it was a little bit...
like 2 years. We did one EP, and we had some other recordings in the can, and then it just kind of, I got out of debt and felt like I was beating my head against the wall too with the touring, and we just kind of ended. So that was 1997, 13 years in. we took a break.
Then you actually took a break yourself for a bit. But when you decided, and I'm not sure how this happened, Yonge-Dundas Square.
Oh yes.
Getting the Guinness Book of World Records for the most sax players, 900. I was there, and I know there were 900.
Yes,
900 sax players.
That was incredible. So we decided that it was the 20th anniversary in 2004. So I was like, why don't we do something? It had been enough time. Everyone had forgotten all the trials and tribulations of touring, and we had a sunny sort of appreciation for each other. And I'd done my own record and won a Juno and everything, so I'd had that nice foray into that thing. And so we decided to come back, and I was like, what could make a real splash? And I thought about, let's break the world record. And it was really great. I had a great helper. I got one of those grants, to $5,000 to find someone to help you do things, and I found someone to help me work on this project, Lance.
Lance Brass.
Yes, Lance Brass, and he did a really great job, And also our publicist, who's moved to Edmonton, Bobby Beeson. She was really great. Wow, she did an amazing job.
Olivia Chow was there.
Olivia Chow. So you and Olivia Chow were kingpins and were the actual signatories on the grant, and of course your association with radio and everything really helped to push it. Long McQuaid came through, but it just snowballed from this sort of publicity stunt into a really beautiful a community event.
Kids were bussed in from some schools.
Yeah.
Adults who maybe hadn't played sax for years but owned a sax showed up.
I know, it was amazing. And I did a lot of, this is sort of still early internet days, but I found community bands and I told them about it. I found
very early internet days, 2004, right? Not everybody had a computer at that point.
I was digging. I found the Argos band and told them about it. Just all these little interesting bands, told them about it. And then Lance got us into a school bulletin board. So that was great. It got posted in a whole bunch of schools. So that's how that kind of came about.
And you also, this is so much work. No one could understand how much work this is. You had to write charts for all different people of all different levels of playing. You had a chart so simple, I could have played it.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, I wrote a whole bunch of charts, posted them, or sent the PDFs to people so they could learn it.
And then you had extra charts there when people signed in case they forgot their charts.
Yeah, it was a real logistical event. We worked on it for 6 weeks, really quite hard. And
of course the photographs that everybody took. Now you did two things, and I remember because I couldn't help it. I was emceeing for you, and I couldn't help but ask everyone to do 2 minutes of free jazz for Ornette Coleman.
Incredible. It sounded like Tibet, the horns of Tibet. That was one of the highlights of it for me when you did that.
Crazy music. And then you were doing Theme from Hockey Night in Canada.
Yes.
Something that everybody knows.
Yeah, that was the thing. We were thinking, should we do Spadina Bus? But Lance actually convinced me, no, do Hockey Night. Everyone knows that it'll generate some sort of a bit more interest. So he really called that right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was something. And then did that actually spur you to just going, you know what, we got all this attention, why don't we go do some more gigs again? It kind of ramped you back up.
So it kicked off, we did the 2004 tour, we did all the jazz festivals, it was our 20th anniversary, it went really well, we had a great time, we were making money for the Shuffle Demon Retirement Fund, so to speak. And then I was pretty satisfied. I was like, okay, that's great, maybe we'll come back and for the 25th or whatever.
Yeah.
And Stitch was the one who took the reins. He was like, no, I really want to work on this. And I was like, okay. I know he'd booked some tours for his own project before and everything. So, but I was really, a little, didn't really reluctant to relinquish the reins, so to speak. So
right, because you were pretty much the band leader, publicist, road manager, everything at the beginning.
Yeah,
agent,
for a long time. Yeah. I mean, I had help along the way for sure, but Dave Parker was very helpful. But I, gradually I said, okay, let's put our toe in the water. And then in 2006, Stitch came up with a tour of China, a tour of India, and a tour of Europe, all in 2006 on his own, just digging in the corners. We had to figure out how it worked. At first, I was letting him do everything, and then one classic. I said, Stitch, we need 2 doubles and a single in Amsterdam because we're going to be there for 4 days, and he booked by mistake 2 doubles and a single in a hostel. So it was 2 double beds and a single bed in a hostel. So we had Perry looked at me and it was like, okay, the double so we slept in a bed together in a hostel.
Oh my God.
It was a unisex room, the sounds all night of these teens having fun in the hostel. It was so funny. So then I said, okay, I'm really good at the road managing. You're really amazing at all this other stuff. So
he can be the agent, but you'll look after the other details.
So we it's a partnership.
And how about Cuba? You guys kill over in Cuba.
Yeah, it's great. Well, the Stitch has always had a fascination for Cuba, and I actually took the band there in '94 as part of the jazz festival. But we finally got back last year. It was amazing. We played in Santiago, which is a really interesting town, at the jazz festival, and then Havana at the jazz festival. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to do that. And
now let's go back to the beginning for a minute. Well, first, any more Shuffle Demons things coming up in the next year? Is there another album in your mind? Or
yes, absolutely. So we're doing the Used Room show today, and then we've been working. We started recording a new album. We've got a ways to go. We've actually, Stitch in his way, had got funding from Factor, Toronto Arts Council, and Canada Council. So we have 2 albums worth of funding, which is unbelievable. And so we're working.
Well, you paid your dues for over 20 years. I think it's only fair. Yeah, and there's no one like you. So
yeah, no, I mean it's wonderful. We do have a history, and it's kind of easy for people, I think, on a jury to say, well, they have history, they have great players in the band, they have good material. It's
and you represent Canada around the world. This isn't playing on. And may I say, you have actually inspired 10 bands that are amazing, like the Heavyweights Brass Band.
Right.
A lot of these bands that are on the streets playing with horns.
Yeah,
you're bringing almost the New Orleans vibe in. Like Heavyweights took what you did and added the tuba or the sousaphone.
Yeah.
So
Turbo Street Funk.
Street Funk, fantastic band.
Such a funny
There's
story.
so many of them now on the street, and it makes Toronto a better place.
Yeah, such a funny story with those guys. Someone had posted a video of them playing Spadina Bus, and it was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. So one day I was riding my bike at Queen and Spadina, and there they were. And I stopped and checked it out there. I don't think they were playing Spadina Bus, but I said, hey, after they stopped, you guys are great, it sounds really good. And Casey turned to the other guys and went, it's the guy. And he was like, oh, we play Spadina Bus, I hope that's okay. And I'm like, of course that's okay, it's awesome. And so I went to their first record release and sat in on Spadina Bus, and
awesome.
So we had a nice little connection with those guys.
I want to go back to the very beginning. You're in Salmon Arm, BC.
Indeed.
When did you fall in love with music? When did you know you wanted to be a sax player?
Well, my mom had always, I was the youngest by many years. My sister's 12 years, my brother 8 years older. So when they were off at school, my mom would take me to do artistic things. We were in Winnipeg for one winter, and she loved the ballet and the opera, so she took me to those kinds of things. And she was always there. Got me started on piano lessons when I was 6 and that sort of thing. So I just gravitated towards the saxophone. It was that thing when grade 8 we had to choose an instrument, and I'd be listening to the Jesus Christ Superstar record, and there was a sax solo on there.
Heavy music in that one.
Yeah, and there was a sax solo, and I looked on the piano and I figured out what range it was, so I ended up with a tenor sax at that point. And went through school and wasn't great technically, but I had a real fearlessness about improvising. And then I got the Time Out record, Dave Brubeck.
So Paul Desmond convinced you to go alto and change your saxophone?
Well, eventually. When I was 12, I got that one, and then later when I was 16, I got Herbie Hancock, Headhunters, and I was just really, really into the music. And then I took a side trip and I got accepted to Pearson College in Victoria, which was an international school, which also really helped with the whole appreciation and understanding of people from all over the world and that desire to see the world. And that kind of sidetracked me a little bit because there wasn't really a formal music program there. It was like grade 12 and 13 at the time. But we did have music appreciation studies, and the cool thing was we would get together and play. So these kids from all around the world who were very bright were also musical. So we would write our own songs, and we're kind of outside of this whole formalized musical training thing.
Right.
And that's kind of was a
You're
cool
not playing
inspiration.
Theme from Rocky like a marching band in high school or something.
Exactly, right. We were writing our own songs which were weird and didn't make sense, but did make sense. So that, whereas it may have set me back in terms of technique or understanding of harmony or whatever, it really gave me that sort of creative expression and that ability to to use that as something different.
It's cool that you're saying this because Bruce Cassidy was my guest last week, and he was saying how kids learn too much of the theory and the structure before they learn to just play.
Right.
And if they will just play and just have fun with it first,
right,
they'll find a voice before they even start the studying part of it. He thinks that's just a little bit more fun, healthier, and less academic, more from the heart.
Right. And that's the thing that people really appreciate, is someone with a unique voice. And people love the way I sound, even though it's really not that conventional sometimes, or it's
No, it certainly isn't conventional sometimes.
I know, but people like it, right?
Yeah.
They it's something different. It's something they can grab onto, So that is, I find that.
When did you go to alto sax?
Oh, so I was busking in Toronto, pre-Shuffle Demons. I was making my way through York University in 1982, 83, 84. And I busked so much in the winter that I actually broke the neck of my tenor. I guess, like, kind of grinding down on it, it actually bent, and there were holes all, like, it was sort of a metal fracture all the way down. So I sent it off to get repaired, or I'd get a new one, or for some reason it took forever. And I'd met a guy called Mike Kagan at a jam session earlier, and I'd had a Selmer soprano sax, which was actually probably worth a lot. But he said, "Do you want to trade for this alto?" And it was just one of those things. Okay. Like, I was really into saying yes to the world, like, sure, that sounds cool. So I had this alto lying around, started playing it, and was like, wow, I really like this.
Yeah.
I could never really get a sound that I liked on tenor, and all of a sudden I got this sound that I liked on the alto.
How do you describe the difference to a layman? Because it could be a subtle difference. It really isn't, but it could be a subtle difference to someone who doesn't really hear it. Can you describe the different feel? Yeah,
I mean, the alto, it's a higher sound. Can be a more elegant and beautiful sound, like Paul Desmond would play, and it can be a very fast and aggressive sound as well, because it's in a higher range, and it's a little easier to be dexterous on it because it's faster and lighter and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's the way altos. The tenor's a bit deeper, a bit bluesier, a bit more passionate in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I always kind of played the alto with a bit of that tenor feel, I think, and that's probably what makes it a bit different as well.
Now, when you went to do your own first record, this must have been an exciting time, because you had written all these songs, including Guru Ship,
right? Exactly.
One of your first songs.
Yeah.
So when you recorded that album, Tales from the Blue Lounge,
indeed.
I don't imagine you really thought you had big chances of picking up a Juno Award for your very first record.
No, and it was, I got a grant, which was wonderful from Factor, and I just wanted to get these songs recorded. But I really, having done Shuffle Demons albums in the past, and at some point when we were really churning them out, the quality might have gone down a bit because we just wanted to get a new one out. And so, because they were all my own original songs, I really, really wanted to make sure that they were done to the highest standard that I could.
And you went to John O'Grant,
right?
Who we both know is a genius, but back then he was very young.
Yeah.
What was it that made you go, I'm going to work with that guy and let him?
Well, because you turned me on to him because of the many projects we did with Jono when we were working on your records. And I must say, those records really also allowed me to flourish as an arranger, because you'd given me the opportunity to arrange some interesting songs, takes on modern hits.
The Royal Jelly Orchestra.
Yeah.
Did you arrange, now this is fuzzy for me and it was my record, but did you arrange the Rush tune, Closer to the Heart?
Oh,
you did the horns for that, but I think maybe that was Jono's arrangement.
Yeah.
A lot of these songs, but you did arrange horn sections for various songs on the Christmas album, all kinds of records.
One of the great was Taking Care of Business. We did it in sort of a Latin feel, and I took the guitar solo and turned it into a Latin solo. That was really fun.
Randy Bachman called me and he said, I love your version of American Woman. I'm going to play it like that in concert. Wow. I need to reach John O'Grant and get the original charts. I love the few little changes you made, the artistic license. I love it. And then I said, well, what did you think about Taking Care of Business? He goes, oh, that's just weird, man.
Sorry, Randy.
I love that version.
Sorry, Randy, I know. But that was the thing. It was so fun to be able to experiment with that and learn, and, put some of the techniques I learned at York University into play in a real live recording situation.
So you did, I guess, 3 or 4 records with me with the Royal Jelly Orchestra, and then when you went to put out Tales from the Blue Lounge, and it did win a Juno.
Yeah.
What happened in your mind after that? Did you think now? Did you start touring with your own band for a little while?
Yeah, it was great. I did that jazz festival circuit, started touring with my own band, kept getting Factor grants to do new albums. So it was every couple of years I would write a bunch of songs. So that was sort of a collection of old songs and a few new songs over the years on the Tales from the Blue Lounge album. And then the next ones were, next 3 were, coming up with songs every year for that. So that was really exciting, getting to play with lots of different cool musicians.
Absolutely. And you also continued to make cutting-edge videos that really take a lot of money. I was deathly ill with the flu and couldn't take part in a video called The Old Guys.
Right.
But you had swing dancers from Europe that were absolutely amazing. I mean, that video, I don't know, it looks like it cost $50,000.
Yeah, I know. That was sort of like another 10 grand kind of thing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but we had an amazing crew, and I met up with the swing scene through playing with Tyler Urema and Terry Wilkins and all those people who are doing the swing revolution.
And swing was huge in the mid to late 90s.
Exactly.
Huge.
So I was like a floater on that scene where I would do subs and things. I wasn't part of the original groups, but I got into that scene, so I knew a bunch of the swing dancers. So as it happened, there was a swing dance troupe from Sweden who were the Hotshots, who were just incredible, coming to town that day, and so they managed to just for free.
Unbelievable.
Like all these swing dancers participated in that video.
Well, they have that video forever to show their grandchildren, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, so
let me ask you about your community work, because you picked up an Ontario Arts Award for your work for the community, for Toronto, for Kensington Market specifically. Tell me about living in the market and your pedestrian Sundays.
Yes, thanks to the Toronto Arts Council Foundation, the Roy Thompson Hall Arts Award. That was really wonderful recognition.
It came with some money too, but it's really the title that lives on.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. And community music has always been a really important thing for me. I grew up playing in the youth center in Salmon Arm, that sort of thing, where there were hippies around and we jammed, and it was getting people involved. And I guess when I was studying ethnomusicology at York or something, I kind of came on this idea that in so many tribal societies or societies that really aren't as interested in or exposed to the commercial elements of music, music is there in all times, at the births, at the deaths, at the marriages, at the important, the rites of passage and puberty. So music is there, and it's not just the hallowed musicians that play. The whole community gets involved. Everyone sings. Sure, the griot may lead the thing, or there may be, some important people in the community leading it, but everyone gets involved, and that's always really appealed to me. I love it. I'm not a snob in terms of things are out of tune or people are playing things incorrectly. I just love it when people get involved.
Make a joyful noise.
Make a joyful noise, yeah, because it's really connected. Music is really part of us all, and we should all get a chance to express it. And the way it's kind of been monetized and culturalized, where if you don't have a CD, it doesn't matter, or I only, we've put these artists on a pedestal and go, I could never be that good. Sure, but it doesn't matter.
Right. Do it because you love it.
Yeah, do it because you love it.
So Kensington Market, you were doing parades, solstice nights, and
so it started really early. Started in about 1985 with Ida Carnivali in Kensington Market, and I'd been hooked up in Kensington through my friend Peter McDonald, and Perry White used to live there, and so I always hung out in Kensington. Somehow hooked up with Ida, and I remember the Shuffle Demons did a spring parade with these goofy paper hats, and we went down Spadina or whatever. And Perry always says, sort of begrudgingly, "Oh, Rich loves a parade," because I'm always go, "Oh, parade, sure, we can do that." So that was sort of my first connection to that. And then when PS Kensington started, I actually got a grant from the Canada Arts Council for community music, and so I was like the leader, and I hired all these people. So I would hire ringers, and I would hire people who were just community-minded musicians, and we populated the music for that first PS Kensington. I guess it was maybe 14 years ago. So every Sunday we'd go out and I'd have this band of 10 to 14 people, and it helped a lot of young people. It helped them sort of get a taste of playing music and making a little money, and a lot of them are now, Chris Butcher started that in that band, or he was, one of the first people I found. I was really interested in finding young people to play. Michael Johnson was there, all kinds of different folks got their feet wet playing music in that. So that was a really wonderful time.
And the Pedestrian Sundays was also really about leave the cars alone, let the streets fill with people and music, right?
Absolutely. People, music, art, and we were really adamant about not getting sponsors. We didn't really want the GM pedestrian zone. Right? Yeah. That was we wanted it to be sort of free from that, and just allow the culture to sort of organically evolve. So, I mean, some of the best moments were in Upper Augusta when we'd sort of have a closer from. We went till 7 and we get a little late closer in the northern end, and we'd have the samba groups, with 30 samba drummers and then 20 horns and everyone dancing in the streets in this wild organic party. It was just, and that's pre-weed legalization.
Hey, now speaking of that, you ran for mayor.
I did.
Now, I know you weren't planning on winning, but you had a lot to say back in those days, and that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
How do you think Toronto's doing?
Well, it's a bit sad. I mean, a lot of people like John Tory in that he wasn't Rob Ford. He wasn't. There was a certain weight that everyone felt when Rob was running. The good thing is that council, he was kind of so out there in terms of the things that he did, and he wasn't very good at selling it, that council was able to kind of do okay in a lot of ways. Now, John Tory's he's very good at selling stuff that I don't think is very good. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem. I think we were kind of handcuffed by a bunch of really kind of out there capital projects like the Scarborough subway, which is, forever this sort of ridiculous thing that was cooked up in poor old Rob's brain about the LRT, in fact, affecting traffic, which it never was proposed to do. Anyway, so there's a few switches that got tripped that I think have put us in a poor position, and I'm quite fearful actually with Doug Ford at the helm as to, he really seems to have his eyes set on Toronto and this whole stripping council down to 25 members. People say, oh, those guys, they work, they hardly work, and they're taking all this money by being a counselor and everything. It's just, if you've ever met a counselor, like Christopher Wong,
they never stop working if they're good ones.
Mike Layton, and sure.
Paula Fletcher, I know so many of them. They work all the time.
I know, they work all the time. And I suppose if you're in one of the more sort of inner suburban ridings where there's not like 50 developments happening in your riding, and there's not as much of a homeless problem, as much of a dangerous drug overdose problem, you may have a slightly easier time. But for the most part, councillors people say, why are you running for mayor? Why don't you run for councillor? And I was like, councillor's too hard. It's 3 hours. Of course, mayor's hard, but
plus you might win as a councillor, then
that would be horrible. Yeah, and that's not me. I mean, it takes a real incredible dedication. Your meetings like 7 days.
You could have lunch with K-Suits, or you could go play some saxophone.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I know. Yeah.
Hey, so when you're thinking about Toronto and the future, what about what's going on now with rent control or lack thereof?
Right. Oh, I know.
Like affordable housing for artists seems to be at an all-time low.
That's very difficult. I mean, there's a bunch of different factors at play. As much as sometimes on tour, Airbnb is a wonderful thing. When it really has done a horrible thing for the housing market, where it's taken a lot of units out of the housing market because people can make more and with less hassle by doing Airbnb. So there really have to be, I think the city's working towards rules around that will free up some units. And then, rent control. I mean, once again, one of those red tape cutting things that conservatives love to do. The red tape's there for a reason, so people get a chance to survive. And as they say, when you invest in people who need hand, and if you need to have life made just a little easier so they can get a little level up, it's good for everyone. It build society up from the bottom, not from the top down, because that doesn't work. Building people up from the bottom actually makes the rich people richer. It's goofy. Right. Crazy, but it works because those people buy stuff and they contribute and everything.
Right, they start to contribute because they can.
Because they're not, sending it to the Cayman Islands because they don't have anything to send there. Anyway.
That's right. You do a lot of charity work. Are there any charities that are particularly close to your heart?
Oh, geez. I've really been working less with charity, but more like with Friends of Kensington Market, and then sort of the controlling of development issues that have really been happening. Because, that's once again on a local scene. So I'm on the board of Friends of Kensington Market, and we're really trying to negotiate between the condos and maybe some of the larger bars that want to come into this little fragile.
And you still don't have a Walmart in there or a KFC yet, right?
Yeah, but that's that's really difficult. So that's where I've been spending more of my time.
Wow. Now I want to ask you about some nightclubs in the city, because you have been playing around Toronto forever, and right now I'd say we have a lot of great clubs. Some people say it was better in the old days. I would argue that there's a lot of amazing clubs these days.
Sure.
What are some of your favorite places to play?
Well, Hughes Room Live, of course, is great sight lines and just a really attentive audience. That's really nice. Lula Lounge, of course, if you want to get people dancing, and it's a beautiful space, and there's such great folks there. I really love all the staff, Tracy and Jose and Todd, everyone. Everyone works there. Howard, one of the best sound people around. Then, of course, there's the Pilot on the Cup. I get maybe 3 or 4 gigs a year there, but I always look forward to it. It's a great listening audience, and it's got that old time feel. People going there on a Saturday afternoon. A lot of older folks. They're not looking at their phone. They're listening. They're having a social event. It's so wonderful. The Reservoir Lounge, where I play every Tuesday with Tyler Urema.
Party.
Oh,
wow! Is that a great room?
It's one of my favorite gigs ever. It feels like the 1950s, where people are in a club, they're listening to the music, they're drinking, they're having a good time, the band's drinking a bit. It's a party. We don't care if they're really listening. We want them to have a good time, and it makes us have a good time. And some of the most wonderful playing I've been part of has been at that club.
Absolutely.
So that's good. The Rex, of course, the home of jazz for so many years, and thanks to Jim Heineman and John T. Davis, who I believe opened it up, really.
Wow!
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think Jim went in there and convinced them to have some jazz one day.
And they're still playing around. That is amazing. I love to know that.
Yeah. So, the Rex has been great, and Bob, who owns it, I mean, he could sell for an amazing amount, and they could be a terrible condo there.
They offered him a lot of money. I have no idea how much.
I know. Well, it must be astronomical. And so he's contributed his heart and soul to this town and to music for so long.
It's not like it's going to go down in value, but the fact that he could have done this so many years ago, and he stays for the love of the music, really.
I know.
Wow.
It's amazing.
And what about the new club that I saw you in recently?
Oh, what was
Drum
that?
Taberna.
Oh, Drum Taberna. Oh,
that's a crazy little room.
I love Drum Taberna.
I love that it's a new room and it's always jammed.
Yeah, and that was started by Jaymz Bee and a bunch of people from La Palette and La Palette family, because they were the ones who originally got the whole Pedestrian Sunday Kensington movement going. They're the most community-minded people I know. We always do Car-Free Day and just all the celebration of the blackout together, and so.
For the celebration of the blackout.
Yeah.
That is a crazy idea. Tell us about that one.
Oh,
that's a great idea.
Oh, no. Every single year, I can't do it all the time because I'm away, but in August, there's a celebration of the blackout. And what we do is we gather on some side street somewhere. Jaymz actually has like a 1,000,000-watt flashlight that he can shine at street lights and convince them that it's sunny out, and so they go dark for 15 minutes before they realize that was just a flashlight, I'm turning on again. So he blacks out a street, and we march down the street playing, and then we'll get to an intersection, and we'll kind of take it over. We'll take over the intersection, we'll do it in a respectful manner. Once the lights change, we bomb into the intersection, and then people allow the cars, we have marshals, and we allow people to turn right only, And if there's an ambulance or something, we're respectful, or TTC. We take it over, and we have this wild jam for 15 minutes in the middle of an intersection. One time they moved a couch out there, and they had a fountain, and people dancing, and like the samba bands and the horns, and it's just this most incredible pandemonium. And then the police start to get the idea that it's happening, and we hear some sirens in the distance, and then it just filters away. And it's just a wonderful sort of thing. There was a book by a guy called Hakim Bey that I was reading when we were starting the P.S. Kensington movement, and he talked about the temporary autonomous zone. So there's no way to really kind of make your own island free from the rules and regulations of a capitalist society or whatever sort of colonial things going on or whatever. But you can make these temporary autonomous zones where you can have your fun and do something really cool and artistic or whatever. And then when the authorities notice it, you can just dissolve and you can move on and find another place. So that was a really important book and a really important concept that we've really come on to.
Right on. So Drum Taberna, let's see.
Oh yeah, well let's continue with drum.
Yeah.
So what was really cool was that was Tortilla Flats originally, and then when it went under, not only did Jaymz and the gang want to create a new space and have sort of a more live music space because Paulette's limited in that way, but they didn't want a chain store going in there because Queen Street at that point is very ripe for a chain store, and the rent is astronomical. So a chain is maybe the only one who can afford it. So they went in, they put their savings on the line, and they really took a big gamble, and it's paid off wonderfully because it's
jammed in there.
It's jammed, yeah. And it's great, and the reason is the drinks are reasonable, the food's great, and it's reasonable. It's a real community-oriented space. They have great community music, like all kinds of really cool music from all over the world.
Right. It's world music, it's folk, it's jazz, it could be anything in there.
Yeah. So I really love that, and I really support it and hope it goes great because they're just such great people. And they're all my favorite people, like Prince at the door. He's been one of my favorite people ever who plays in the samba bands, and he's just such an elegant, cool guy.
And the fellow who does the tip jar and talks about Misha is so sweet, and he really wants to pull out this is a socialist club.
Yeah, I know.
We're not going to charge you, but we're going to pass the hat, and you could do the right thing. And he's really good at that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's wonderful.
Now, you are celebrating a bit of an anniversary. You have been married for a while, and you've been with the same girl for how long?
25 years with my Susie. Yeah.
You and Susie, 25 years. Now, it's kind of funny because you look about 35, so there's a little bit of a thing here going on.
Well, I guess the music keeps me long and the love of my life. But we were very lucky. She was working on Queen Street in a bar run by Marcus O'Hara, the Squeeze Club, the very, very famous Squeeze Club. Beautiful spot, and Marcus is a beautiful fellow and part of the O'Hara clan. And I had an apartment by chance across the street. And that's kind of when the Shuffle Demons had finally devolved, and we were, or I guess we were still going. That's true, but in a different way. And I had an apartment across the street. I didn't have much money at all because I was in a lot of debt. So every Sunday I would go over and have like some soup, one beer, and she would serve me. And then we met at an after-hours club one night, and then it just kind of took off. And we never looked back. And it was like, oh boy, be good.
Right. You dated a long time before you got married too, right?
Yes, we did. Well, she was always a little bit of a radical in her family. Was originally a bit of a punk or the, as Jaymz called it, the goth queen of whatever school it was that they went to. And so she didn't, was sort of against the whole normal thing anyway. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I just didn't want to jinx it. I was like, whatever. I like it. Just anything, and then eventually we did tie it up. So
you got married in some faraway island, and Amy Winehouse showed up.
We were in St. Lucia.
Crazy.
We were in St. Lucia. Actually, it's a very funny story. So we flew in at night. You fly into the resort. We're going to let's go to a fancy resort to get married. Just the two of us. We're kind of eloping. We flew in at night, and then the next day you have that sort of resort tour. And we were with this woman who was actually an Ontario judge, and just three of us on the resort tour. And we get on the tour, and she's like, oh, I didn't know there'd be a celebrity at this resort. And I was like, well, I'm not really much of a celebrity, but, I thank you. I mean, it's just, what? Who are you? No, Amy Winehouse is here. Like, oh.
meet a world famous celebrity.
So funny. Oh, I'm like, that's nice, but so hilarious. And so we go. And so there we, we do the tour, and we get down to the beach, and there she is. She's hanging out on the beach, and kind of schnogging with this young British kid too, which was kind of like, okay, this is all gossipy and funny. Then that night we go on Perez Hilton. I mean, that guy, the gossip column. I don't know if he's still around.
Yeah, I don't know if he's around, but.
And boom, there were the photos of what we just saw. So it was crazy. Like they were, the paparazzi were there, even though we didn't notice.
Yeah.
So that night we went to the piano bar, and there she was performing, her by herself, like kind of, put a chord out and then sing a few notes, and then we'd look for the next chord and sing a few notes, doing jazz standards. So the next night I got kind of drunk at dinner, and I was like, I'm gonna go play the piano bar first, and then maybe she'll show up, and she did. So we jammed. Thankfully there was a guy playing, or I was either playing bass notes and the British guy was playing upper. One of the two, we were sharing the piano and she was playing, because I'm not very good on piano. But that was great. We jammed with Amy Winehouse for about 10 songs. I got in People magazine online because someone took a photo, which we also had. We could have sold the photo, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So yeah, she was, she was a sweetheart. She was one of those people that you just wanted to go, oh my God, okay, we can help. You wanted to nurture her, because she does seem just kind of like going off, in all different directions. Like one day I was sort of taking pictures of lizards at the hotel, and she ran up behind me and goes, "Oh, what's that?" and grabbed my camera and started, "Hi, Amy," and then she just wandered off. But she saw us getting married and waved, and then whenever she saw us, she'd go, "Oh, it's a lovebirds." So she's very sweet, yeah.
So you have a beautiful relationship, an incredible career. What is something that you haven't done yet that you want to look forward to? I'm sure there's a few.
Oh, wow, something I haven't done yet. Oh, man. Well, I think it's funny because George was talking about this. It would be fun to write it down, write down a book of the stories, because I do have a lot of interesting stories in there.
Yeah.
So that would be good. If I could get that down, it might be interesting for people to see.
Right on.
Keep writing and arranging music, playing with different people. People often ask you what your dreams are, and it's like, I'm kind of living it. Right.
Yep. That's right.
I want things to go smoother and things to work out, but I mean, I've said, I've been retired for 35 years. What do retired people do? They often get together with their friends and play music. They drink a little bit, they travel the world, and they make a little bit of money. And I do all those things, especially the little bit of money.
Right. Thank you, Richard Underhill.
Thank you, Bee.
Wow, Richard Underhill. That's a lot of information. Wasn't that something? I want to thank my producer, Jason J. Brown, for doing some of this visuals behind, because really, that is incredible. The amount of work it takes to make one of these podcasts for you for free. We're hoping that you'll help us out here. Patreon is where you can do that. I've got a handful of people that have done this so far, and every one of you, it means so much to me. I mean, you're putting money where you don't have to, but it's important, because if nobody did this, I'd probably have to stop. This does take a lot of time, and I'm a freelance artist right now. There's no other way to make money except promoting the arts, throwing concerts, taking people on trips, making records. Oh wait, am I complaining? No, I'm not complaining. But I would love your help, so if you can, give me a shout. That'd be great. Thanks to Barbarian Steakhouse, thanks to Paul Barber and Associates, and thank you to all of the clubs that help support this. I support you, and I hope all of you will get out of your house and get out to the nightclubs here in Toronto. Jaymz Bee, signing off.